Welcome, everybody, to the Technologist Podcast, episode 12. With me today is Niels Malotaux. Niels, welcome.
Thank you.
Niels, I've seen a lot of your work. It's quite fascinating.
Is it?
It is. I saw you recently on the Tech Excellence meetup, and I was blown away by by the knowledge bombs you're throwing. And you have a very direct way of summarizing project management and QA. You have an amazing stage presence, I dare say, and I love your jokes and your quotes and everything from your website. In a short manner, what is the best way to explain what you do to the part of our audience that don't know you yet?
I coach individuals, projects, teams, organizations to deliver better results in less time.
You have a lot of experience in the industry in general. I see, you've been with us professionally for 40, 50 years now, going from microprocessors to QA to coaching.
Well, yes. Well, I came at Philips when they started marketing their first microprocessor. I was asked to deliver a course, microcomputer hardware systems design. My background is electronics engineering. So electronics designer by birth. And I started there in 1976. In 1980, I decided that I didn't only want to use Philips products. I wanted to have anything in the world to be available in the designs I make for customers. So I started my product development company. And in 1997, we saw that our customers became rich and we not. Apparently, I was doing something wrong.
Interesting.
And what was that? We kept for the customers, the panic budget was not necessary. The panic budget is when a product goes into production or when things go at customers and something is wrong. The cost is not important anymore. Take the screwdriver, go to Saudi Arabia and make it work.
Wow. So
things like that.
So your output got commoditized, or was it?
So the panic budget is once it is live, when it is at customers, the cost is not important anymore. Help the customer. While our product development was usually squeezed.
To be cheap and quick.
And we spent maybe 10% more than they paid us, just to make sure that the panic budget was not necessary at our customers, which means they became rich and we not. So after 17 years, we decided, I was doing it with my brother and a few engineers. We decided that we would stop subsidizing our customers. And well, we transferred the business to another development company. And I started thinking, what now? And then I thought, well, I'm all about delivering quality, delivering products that simply work. No need for the panic budget. So I try to give that to the next generation. And that started in, let's say, in about 2000, 1998, 2000. And since then, I have coached, hundreds of teams, individuals, projects. And if you do that in many different countries, you get some idea what works and what doesn't work.
What surprised you? What are some of those ideas you thought worked, but then when you tested them at a bigger scale with many companies?
That's an interesting question, but usually I forget what happened. I'm looking forward. So my magic tool is Plan, Do, Check, Act. Deming called it Plan, Do, Study, Act. I don't mind how people call it as long as we do it. So constantly improving what we do, what we have to achieve, and how we do it. And if that's what you do, you look forward and you kind of forget the things you did wrong. Because the moment people complain that we should do something differently, and they keep complaining, I say, I don't want to hear it anymore. Either it's not important, I don't want to hear it anymore. And if it's important, big mantra, what are we going to do about it?
The act part of the
act part of the Plan to Check Act, which usually is forgotten.
Yeah. No, but
so actually that's what I do. I get people through that Plan to Check Act cycle.
And then hold them accountable on acting on knowledge that they gather.
Well, I don't hold anybody accountable. They should hold themselves accountable. I mean, who am I to tell people what to do? I just suggest things and hope that they learn to do things better themselves.
They learn to do things better themselves. So when we're talking about the industry, when you're talking about quality, are we talking software projects? Are we talking tech projects in the tech industry? How broad are we going? How widely applicable is your work?
The things I do, the question I ask to make people think isn't bound by any industry. So, of course, there is a lot of software, but a very successful project was a space project. No software at all in that project, as far as I know. So, and they were afraid to deliver at least 1 year late because that's what they normally did.
So they planned to be late.
Sorry?
They planned to be late, so the deadlines were synthetic.
Well, they know from their previous projects that usually it takes longer. And then usually their customers don't mind because the result is great. Yeah. But still, in this case, there was one bag of money from ESA and the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And if the money was up, they had to pay the rest themselves. And if you have 30 people with a lot of subcontractors around Europe, that could be costly. So in the end, using the techniques I gave them, and they were very clever, so very clever to take the things I suggested. So they delivered not 1 year late, but 1 day early.
Nice. I like that. I like that distinction.
So
sooner, not faster. Yeah.
Yes. Space, traffic, trains, parking system, accounting software, you name it. Doesn't matter, because I only ask simple questions. What are we supposed to achieve? What are we going to do to support achieving that? And what are we going to achieve by the end of the week? What are we going to do this week to contribute to successful achieving that? A few simple questions. And because
how do they usually respond to those questions? I mean, because it's obvious, no? Are they asking themselves these questions?
Well, people usually people are in the treadmill. Of doing the work, busy.
The feature factories, the constant.
I call it the pull-do cycle.
Cycle.
I can't call it plan. I call it pull. What's the next thing we have to do, and we already do it? What's the next thing we already do it? We're in this content, and don't think I'm special. I mean, if I'm in development, I tend to do the same things. So many of the things I try to help people to improve are things I've seen in myself first. And then looking around, I saw I'm not that special.
What about your work is surprising? When you talk about quality, what is quality exactly? Is it
the right stuff at the right time?
The right stuff at the right time. That's quality. So if I had to put an equation on it, quality equals right stuff.
Right stuff. And what the right stuff is, we can discuss. And as Tom Gilb always says, how can you measure if you don't quantify?
How can you measure if you can't quantify?
I
mean, and it's either one of your mantras or one of your quotes. We do have to mention them. I mean, your mantras are amazing. I'm going to drop the link to your websites. In the chat.
A lot of mantras because once I was at the customer and one of the guys there said, "Oh, another mantra for Niels." I said, that's a nice definition of, And later I hear them using these sentences in the corridors as well.
I have to admit, they are really catchy. They're very catchy. Yeah, they're very catchy.
And it is all to make people think, to get them out of that hamster mill.
Yeah.
And think, what am I doing here?
To help them catch themselves, get out of
So Puldu is the intuitive cycle how we normally work. Which is, if we are hungry, are we making a quality function deployment table to find out what are the reasons of our hunger and what are possible solutions? By the time we are done, we already starved. So that's the normal way, a survival strategy. But if intuition would be perfect, everything we do would be perfect. Not everything we do is perfect. Therefore, apparently, sometimes intuition points us in the wrong direction, right? So instead of let's plan what to achieve, how to achieve it. The product, the project. And then we do, which is already a pitfall because we have to follow the plan and the plan must be doable. But once we assume we have done that, in the check or study phase, we can think, well, was the result according to plan? And was the product according to plan? If yes, can we do it even better? If no, can we do it better? And then, as you already said, in the act phase, we decide what to do differently. Because if we keep doing the same things,
because you explore,
will be the same.
You get new knowledge, or you retain data.
And you asked, do people like these questions? Yes, they feel, of course, they are a little bit picky questions. But because the result is so quick, they love it.
Like that is what I found.
Is so quick because within the first week already they're going to do more the right things and less the wrong things.
Exactly.
And if they have more success, what more do you want?
Because then they feel that they contribute to the success when they get to answer your questions.
It is them. So usually I don't have to be there very long. I go 1 day a week. And then after a few weeks, I think, am I still contributing more? Because what I contribute should have more value than they have to pay me. Right? Otherwise, I shouldn't be there.
Which mantras do you find being most often repeated? Or being most impactful?
Well, that depends, like everything. But what are we going to do about this is one of the very strong ones.
What are we going to do about it?
And I can have a quick look. I looked at my mantras on the website and I printed them out. But, better go, if people want to know, go to that page.
Yeah, I linked it in the chat.
Malotaux.eu, and then find the mantras and you can look at them. What are we going to do about this is one of the powerful ones, because don't complain. What are we going to do about it? But we cannot. Like the case where the team every week complained, this manager is jeopardizing every time he says we have to do things in a certain way, and we try to do that, and the next week he has new ideas. And
this cadence, the structure, the artificial structure, rather than results.
So I said, where is this guy? They said, you cannot go there. I said, you bet I can. Where does he live? So I went up, opened the door. I saw him sitting there, closed the door. I said, Joe, we have to talk. Either you want the project to fail, then tell us, because we can do it much more efficiently. But
to fail more efficiently.
If you don't want the project to fail, we have to talk. And we talked. It's lonely at the top, so he felt something didn't go well, but there's nobody he could talk to. At the other hand, there was another project where similar manager was, and I went to him, and he said, Niels, sorry, that's how I am. I said, well, then maybe you don't need me. Maybe I don't need you. So I said, then I'm not coming anymore. And then I went to the guys to say, sorry, he doesn't need me. And they said, yes, you're right. What you suggest is very good, but not in this company. I said, okay.
So what is it that you bring when they do need you? I saw evolutionary management, evolutionary QA, Evo mentioned often as a sort of even
So I'm
branding.
reluctant to give it a name, because then people start to call it a name and think we are doing this.
It becomes dogmatic.
Yeah, again, just like we are doing Scrum, we are doing this, we are doing that. I try to avoid that. It's just we have a lot of ways we can improve the way we work. Yeah, on my website you can find under processes, which is a little bit heavy word, but we can talk about the business case, the requirements, architecture and design, document inspection or code inspection. And what I added to that stuff was the weekly task cycle, the bi-weekly delivery cycle, and timeline. So all those things are available.
But it's
like
planning and execution.
Yes. So recently somebody who heard about this, he said, Niels, project management theory and education usually stops at the planning part.
Yeah.
And he
But
said,
nobody knows how to execute well.
Continue in the day-to-day organizing to make it work.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that may be so.
It's what surprises me as well with the common toolkit, that project managers or even CTOs have for tech companies. They install all the project management tools they need theoretically, with Jira included, and then they spend a lot of time feeding the computer with data, but it doesn't help them execute, right? And then I even sometimes see a lot of teams. Number one thing I check, if they do use Jira, I don't recommend it, but if they do use it for Scrum or for Scrum specifically, and they do use sprints, again, I don't recommend it. But if they do use it, the first thing I check is, do they have a sprint goal? Because up there at the very top, there's a goal for every cadence, for every day, for every week, for every cycle that they're executing. What are we executing on? A lot of times I see that field is empty because it's optional. I don't know why it's optional. That seems to be the most important thing. What are we going to do this week? What are we going to do today to make that happen? And it surprises me because companies spend a lot of money on these planning tools, but then if it doesn't help them execute, the ROI is insane.
They shouldn't. If people ask me what's the cost of your coaching, and the same should be there with these tools. Yeah, what's the cost of your coaching? They ask. I said, well, if it would cost, we shouldn't do it. You should benefit from it. It should deliver more value than it costs.
You're a great salesman, Niels.
I'm a very salesperson. I'm an engineer. Engineers are very bad salespeople. But it's as simple as that. The problem in sales is the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Yeah.
How do people understand that we can improve a lot of things very quickly if they don't start tasting? And that's the bottleneck.
They think they have to invest a lot of money, invest a lot of time, and then maybe something will marginally improve. And that's the wrong way of thinking about most.
We install processes and then it works.
Interesting. So who is it not for? This thing that shall be unnamed, that is more like a set of good common guidelines that you've sort of aggregated over the decades of your experience.
Available in my toolbox.
Sorry?
So like the space project, I didn't have to tell them anything about proper requirements. They had a cool example of how to make proper requirements quantified, measurable, and so made by the Meteorological Institute. And they were very skilled system engineers. So I didn't have to teach them anything about that.
They didn't execute on their plan.
How to execute. So they said, Niels, we do this work 27 years. We are very good at it. What do you think you can contribute to that? And there was one thing they didn't know, how to be on time. But the interesting thing is, because they were so good engineers, all I have to do was show them that planning and scheduling is a design problem. And then they knew how to do
it. Let me sit on that for a moment. So planning and scheduling is a design problem.
You design not only your product, you also design your project.
The process of the project.
Whatever
so the execution. So you also, so part of every project, if I were to paraphrase, part of every project is also designing the process that will execute the project. Okay. And that's the
Forget the
missing
word
piece.
process. Sometimes people are afraid about the word process. Everybody does a process. If they don't know, we call it an ad hoc process, but that's another
brilliant.
story. But so I like that word execution. It's about what to achieve, the product, and how to achieve it. That's the execution of getting there. And that's what I mean, I have both sides, quality and time in my toolbox. But once I come there, I have to see what are the weak points and what are the points I don't have to teach because they know. Because people usually are not stupid. There's only one problem.
Yeah.
Because of it is so difficult for people to gauge what we are going to do once they ask me. They only ask me, almost only ask me when they're in big trouble. Yeah. We have a deadline. We see we can't meet the deadline. The space project, they missed every deadline. And 9 weeks later, and since then, they didn't miss any deadline. Yeah. So it's just a little bit different way of thinking, discipline, and things like that. So it is not difficult. Half of what people do in a project or in their work later proves not to have been necessary. Right? So if you, in retrospective, people love retrospective, right? In retrospective, you wasted half of your time.
Yeah.
But the time is already wasted.
Because you already executed on the thing you shouldn't have.
If in perspective, you see you're going to spend time on things that are not necessary, you still can decide not to spend that time. It is so easy to save a lot of time so that you have more time to do the right things and don't do the things that are not necessary. Only if you're in the hamster mill, you don't have time to think.
Exactly.
And that's what I do. If I'm in a project, I say, guys, the nice thing is I have nothing to do. You do the work and I just observe. And if I see something that maybe can help you to do things better, then I see it and it's up to you to try it out.
I coach tech teams primarily on the tactical side, on execution. And one of the things I'm noticing is that most engineers, you said yourself, like people aren't stupid, but most engineers that I work with, like I would say most engineers in the industry have never had the opportunity to be on a well-executed project.
Yes.
So they have no idea of what quality even looks like in the industry. They might have a topological idea of what quality code, what quality output looks like, what a quality plan looks like, but they have no idea on what quality execution looks like.
Exactly.
And then that's where the coaches come in. That's
why it is difficult for me that my marketing is still very difficult because people have no clue what can be done. They do their best.
How much money they're leaving on the table when not focusing on execution.
But as Deming said, doing your best is not enough. Knowing how to do it and then doing your best, that's better.
This discipline reminds me of test-driven development specifically, and perhaps refactoring. That mantra of make it easy to change first and then change it. The same way as if I was planning a project, I would be thinking on the topology of how do I need to adjust the team and then give the project to the team that was optimized for this delivery. How to make the process simpler to deliver this. How to make maybe the communication channels, maybe the process itself, maybe the execution plan. How can we execute better before executing?
So, what are we going to do about it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
a lot of teams don't do this. A lot of teams.
Yeah. The moment I ask the team, what are we going to do about it? They come with answers, with suggestions.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be immediately the right things, but at least now we start discussing. And they are clever people. So the only thing is, somebody must ask, what are we going to do about it? Yeah. And so that's what people in their team already can start to doing, not tomorrow, no, after an hour.
Yeah, today.
If there is any issue, people talk about impediments. I have the bullshit stamp. Bullshit. what are we going to do about it? Don't complain.
The
And then
problem I'm
people are
seeing.
very capable of doing a lot.
What are your thoughts on like popular frameworks like Agile, Scrum, etc.? Because the way you describe it, these processes should never really be introduced because they should be malleable. It should be up to negotiation for during the execution plan.
Of course.
Right? Because the Agile principles, if I go back to the manifesto, there's nothing about a rigidly placed ritual. It's about figuring out what is valuable and how we execute on it. And then
What's the
if it
right
doesn't
thing?
work, and if it doesn't work tomorrow, we replan tomorrow, not
Yeah.
in 2 weeks on a retrospective.
So that's why I don't call myself an agile coach.
Yeah, it's
Because
it's why I
agile
also
doesn't mean
avoid.
coaching.
Yeah.
Yeah. I coach for a result. I sometimes call myself a result coach.
But I like quality on time. Like that really captures the essence of
Quality on time,
on
the
time.
right stuff at the right time.
Mhm.
Because what people tell me often, customers tell me, but also seasoned project managers tell me, they say, Niels, you know what usually the most important thing of the project is? To be on time.
Mhm.
Yeah. How come that all the other requirements seem to be more important than the most important one?
Which is the deadline. Yeah.
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 And
And
most
engineers
of
like to
requirements
think that engineers like to think that the deadline is silly, but it's not. That there's always a business reason for the deadline.
I love deadlines. I
Yeah.
love deadline. If I don't get the deadline, we make them ourselves.
Yeah, because the
Even
constraints
Scrum
make it
does.
easier. The constraints
Even
make it
Scrum
easier
does.
to execute. Yeah.
Yes. So you know Parkinson's law, people spend the time available. If you don't have a deadline, people spend the time available. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So it makes you
yeah.
more efficient. It makes you continuous thinking. Do I really have to do this? Who
Mhm.
is waiting for this and what do they really need? We don't deliver value to users. No, we deliver to the users of our system the opportunity
Mhm.
to deliver value to their customers, to
Surely
do things
sometimes
better than they did before.
than before.
Yeah.
Niels, surely sometimes you ask the question, "Is this valuable?" and you get silence back.
How valuable?
How valuable? Like, what do you do when the team doesn't know the answer to that? You leave the room,
Well,
and it's like, "Call me when you do."
I had a customer in Dublin. Well, I have several customers in Dublin. It's about 6 hour travel, but that's normal for me if I go to customers, about 6 hour travel. But so I was asked because the guy knows me from another company there, and he said this team doesn't know their the goal of their project. Can you help us to do a workshop on goal setting? I
Mhm.
said okay. So I went there, and well, it took almost the whole day to at
Mhm.
least have a goal for the coming sprint.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, because people usually are not used in thinking in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in my courses, I don't teach many courses because I rather do just-in-time training than a course training. But
Same.
I,
But
I,
I
I
never heard it mentioned described that way. Like I
yeah,
do on project, just in time training, essentially
just-in-time
on a
training
critical project. Because
because that's much more educational
yeah,
because
because
you do
because
just
when
the
you
work they have to
do
do.
exactly because if you optimize education without delivery, you learn less.
Yeah.
Right? In an isolated case, in a workshop, you learn less because the delivery is not being prioritized. But if you prioritize the delivery, and I have a coach with you, that is much more useful because there is no nonsense. It cuts out the
The
nonsense
thing
by the
is,
book things.
yes, I found that after trainings, people didn't start doing the things that when I
Exactly,
taught them,
because
they found
it
so
needs to be
useful.
translated to, "Oh, now I learned this. How do I apply it?" And then they need another training to learn how to apply it to their project.
Yeah. Did
Then
you
it's an
mean
endless
this
loop.
or did you mean that? In
Yeah.
this case, should we do this or
Oh,
that?
I wish I had the
So,
problem, so I would have asked him before I went on the workshop.
yeah. So when I'm there, I can say, well, in this case, you could do this. In
Yeah,
that case, how about trying it this way?
because you're
Yeah.
with them
Just in
there
time
on.
training,
Yeah,
because then we use the actual work as the game to play. Yeah,
exactly.
I don't like to introduce just games, agile games or so. No, we use the actual work to learn how to play the game better.
Yeah, it's how I prefer to work with companies as well, with teams.
Yeah.
Is this from the beginning? Or was this a learning curve for you with
Well,
consulting business?
in 1998, we stopped our company. And then I was thinking, what now?
Mm-hmm.
At that time, there was the CMM, the capability maturity model, which was
Mm-hmm.
very heavy process minded.
Very, yeah.
And at a
Also,
large company,
lots of documentation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I was asked to help a very large company in Belgium to implement CMM. Yeah. And I didn't say, should we? Because otherwise I didn't have to come.
Yeah.
So we tried a lot, and we also tried to we experimented to find out why it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we say, well, we try it this way, and why does that not work? So
Mm-hmm.
people were asked, the developers were asked to say in a working group, yeah, and they said, guys, we are going to define processes.
Mm-hmm.
Processes. Yeah, you already follow a process, and that's our process, but now we're going to define it well. Yeah. And then, well, because they were just in that working group, it was easy for them to say whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, the process people were still guiding where they wanted to go. And then the process was written down in a Word document. And then they went back to the work and were supposed to follow the process.
Yeah.
So the problem was, even if they wanted to know what the process said, they had to find the Word document. But the server was a little bit slow. So before they found the proper document, they already backed off.
Yeah.
So then I suggested, well, let's make a website, put it all with links, so that they more quickly can find how to do things properly. So then they said, Niels, can you do that? Huh, me? I'm an expensive consultant. Should I make a website? Well, you know what you mean and things like that. I said, okay. 2 weeks. 1 week, I set up a website and then asked the project managers what they thought about it. And with the feedback, I said, I'll finish it off.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. And you know what happened? Nobody looked at it. As
of course.
predicted.
But it's not part of the process.
Now,
it's not organic.
At least now, the slowliness of the process to find it was gone. Yeah. But so that was one of the experiments we did.
Mm-hmm.
But then we moved to another department. The guy who asked me, he moved to another department, and he asked me with him. And there we developed what we call the EVO approach.
Mm-hmm.
EVO, the word comes from Tom Gilp from Evolutionary Delivery, which he already promotes since the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Agile is nothing new, but we know that. And there, together with this guy from the company, he said, I have to do a lot of people organizing. So he asked me, and we discussed a lot how to implement this.
Yeah.
So there we started with, short cycles. But how short?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's a good cycle size to have a goal not too far away? Parkinson's law, and the student syndrome, student syndrome. When do you start working hard? 1 day before the deadline or 3 weeks before the deadline?
Mm-hmm.
So we said, well, maybe 2 weeks is better than 3 weeks.
Yeah, sooner.
But then the first project we had to try it out was 6 weeks, or else, because the project was failing. So can you, with your new technique, get this project successful? So we said 6 weeks, 2 week cycles, that's not enough feedback. So let's make 1 week cycles. And since then, I'm doing what I call weekly task cycles. People decide what in 2 weeks they should deliver, 2 weeks or less. Yeah. And then every week we think, what do we have to take on ourselves People define their own tasks. They don't get tasks, they make their own tasks.
It's very important.
And they say, what do you have to do to contribute to the success of this delivery? Yeah. And then you see how much time do I personally need to do this, and how much time do I have? Does it fit? Everything that doesn't fit, we already know 1 week before that we will not have it. Well, a lot of their background of the whole work cycle. But there we learn to do 1 week work cycles and 2 week or less delivery cycles. And the nice thing with 2 week delivery cycle and 1 week task cycle, delivery is what we should achieve, task cycle, how we achieve it. That halfway your delivery cycle, you have an idea, am I going to make it? If not, what are we going to do differently? Because failure is not an option.
It's myself. What I really like is this idea of the team members assigning tasks to themselves. It's really important for full ownership.
And they decide themselves what done is for this task.
Yeah, for the acceptance criteria.
Yeah, 90%. If you have 90% done, you start the next 90%. That doesn't work.
I did an event storming workshop this week with a company that I'm working with, and we got the product person on board, and I just facilitated a conversation between them. So just asked each other questions. And the moment the heavy questions came out, the product person went, okay, cool, this was fun. Now I understand. Now I feel like you understand me. So you do what you want. Now I know that you understand me, and now I'm okay, I trust you. And that's a lot of teams don't go through that. A lot of teams require that, well, I don't understand what you want, so tell me, give me a task, give me a ticket, give me a task, give me a ticket. And this give me a task, give me a ticket sort of treadmill, what it creates with the developers, in the individual contributors, or with the individual spokesperson, or maybe even just the manager, or maybe just some kind of collaborator or contractor from the outside, is that teams stop collaborating.
Yeah,
it's not like here's the goal and I'll do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. When I say, okay, we go, we have twins now, 2 beautiful daughters, and when we go outside, it's like we need to do 7 things before we can leave the house. It's like, okay, I'll do this, you do that, because we know what the goal is. We're leaving the house in 10 minutes. We have a starting deadline, right? We're leaving the house in 10 minutes. Okay, I'll do this, you do that. And when the team is incapable, or perhaps feels that it is inappropriate for them to decide what they should do on their own, the person delegating tasks doesn't see the topology of the team as this being a team. And then usually a team of 5 no longer follows 1 sprint goal, but 5 separate sprint goals. And then every person has their own stream. And that is where most projects fail, because only one of those people is usually on doing a high priority task. And 4 of them are essentially producing waste.
Yeah, so how they do it, whether they have individual streams or group streams, that's up to the team to see. Sometimes you need this, sometimes you do that.
How do you corral priorities between them? You said the team should always be working on the most important thing.
Yes.
How do you manage that with multiple streams when the priorities are being compared? Do they have to be mutually blocking in order for that to make sense topologically?
Well, if anything of the things you say happen, what are we going to do about it? And you're clever enough to come with suggestions. Yeah. So, of course, we have to know what the team goal is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it could be that we work on various streams. I was working with a parking system, and both with the software group and with the mechanical group. The mechanical group was making a new payment case, which is a metal case with electronics in it, with a screen, with buttons, with money to put money in, money changer, all these things. So in my website, I think you even can see, and I use it as an example, how different streams have to come to a certain common deadline.
Yeah.
So the electronics had to work, the front panel had to work, the coin changer had to work, the metal case should be there. And how do we synchronize all this work? That
There are
doesn't mean
different
they have
cadences.
to every day to work with each other.
Yeah.
At least they have to know exactly what they are doing so that they synchronize when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And ideally when they're done, not at the end of the deadline.
No, ideally before the deadline, if it was necessary to synchronize.
If it was necessary.
I mean, if you have an electronic thing, it must be mounted in your enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
If it can't be mounted, you have extra work after the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So deadlines are there so that it is done. And at the deadline, you don't want to see that things are not done.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's why starting deadlines are.
How much is that a problem of the deadline itself? I see a lot of times teams struggling with this idea of no, the deadline was when we're done, not when the project's done. Like this then after the fact negotiation of what does done mean. If they are deciding what's done and they don't understand, not because they're stupid, but maybe they're just missing a key piece of the information. Maybe the communication stream broke down and they didn't understand what was important. So they just follow the deadline strictly or the contract strictly.
So we tried to deliver the deadline. We failed in some things. What are we going to do about it? Because you may fail once, but not the second time.
Yeah, you got to learn from it.
You have to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
So in the way I work with people, it is constant, at least a week, and maybe sometimes even faster, constant feedback, not on only what we do, but also how we do it. Yeah. So, and I'm only challenging. I mean, if somebody says, the very first time I used the task cycle, I say, let's plan 2/3 of the time, 2/3 of the available time, because we have to go to the loo, we have to drink coffee, we have to do this, we have to do that, all the things that happen anyway. So things that happen anyway, you don't have to plan. But if you're not careful, after a week, everything happened, but your pile is still the same. So therefore we say we give all the things that happen anyway a time box of 1/3 of the available time.
Yeah.
So that 2/3 is available for the work that has to continue. Yeah. And I would said this because I wanted to make something clear, but of course I forgot in the meantime.
No, we got here because of the deadline, the importance of the deadline, of renegotiating what does done mean, right? So when you're planning the plannable time, not the entire time.
Okay, every week we have a planning session. It's in 3 steps to make it as efficiently as possible. Yeah. Spending with less people costs less than spending with more people. So individually, everybody thinks he knows the goal of the team. If he doesn't, we have to find out. And don't tell me I don't know the goal. It means you didn't find out. Yeah. Individually, you think what you should do the next week. Yeah.
Individually.
Then we work one-on-one. And when I come, that's the first thing I do. Yeah. One-on-one. What's your plan? Because generating a plan costs more than modulating on a plan. So what we do is modulating what the people came in with. And by me asking a few innocent questions, like who's waiting for that? Or is that really necessary? You need that other person for this task. If it's not in his plan, how do you know he's available? Because he won't, because his plan is full. If you're not there, he's not available. So by asking a few innocent questions, they come in with one plan and they go out with a better plan. That's why in the first week, they already are more efficient, doing better things in less time. And then the third element of this planning cycle is team meeting, where the team tells each other, I'm going to do this, next guy. I'm going to do this, next guy. And that moment, And the generation of the plan is there. Now the modulation based on the team dynamics. So somebody says, yeah, but you can't do that because you need me and it's not in my plan. Okay, let's modulate our plan. Or you don't have to do that because, or you can't do that yet because. So there, it's challenging first yourself, then one-on-one, and then as a team, so that at the end of that planning, we are going to work mostly on the right things and less on the wrong things. And now some people say this is very heavy planning. Well, the first day I do this, it takes about 1 hour one-on-one and half an hour team meeting. Within 2-3 weeks, it takes 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 1 hour per person.
Yeah, it's faster. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and in the space project, the system engineer who was running the project, he said, I want to have it 15 minutes each, which he achieved. Yeah. If somebody didn't come in with his initial plan, he said, go back next, as if you came to the dentist.
I love that, because you talk about evolutionary design, management, planning, even execution. If I were to ask you, what is it that's evolving? It's the team dynamics, or is it the individual's understanding of the team dynamics? What is the form evolving?
Yes. So I was, yes, I think 2002 that was. There was a NATO conference on evolutionary project management. Yeah, and I was doing a talk there about these ideas. And then in the back of the room, there was a guy who said, Niels, we design a Eurofighter. That takes a few thousand people years to do that. You don't think that this little thing you are talking about, weekly planning of individuals, that this has anything to do with what we are doing? And my answer was a question. If not every individual in that team of those thousands of people, if not every individual is able to successfully plan and execute their own work week.
Their own week.
Yeah. How can we expect the whole project to be able to do that?
Yeah, because then you need managers holding their hands,
that's
micromanaging.
my problem with Scrum planning, where the team plans. Yeah. So if individuals are not capable in estimating what they can do and what they cannot do, because that's what, in my case, estimation is for. What it only helps people to be successful by the end of the week. Yeah. If they don't know how to do that individually, how can we expect a team to know how to do that? How can we expect them to do it on longer periods of time? So I start with the week. I asked what's the goal of this week, and usually they're not used to answer that question. So usually we don't get there.
Yeah.
So after spending an hour in discussing what the goal should be, I said, okay, let's park that for the moment, not everything at once. You had some idea what you were supposed to do. Yeah. Let's just plan that. Yeah. So small steps, but because those small steps go in the right order and are actually so simple, only a little bit discipline. Yeah. Then that's why within 2-3 weeks, people go much faster already.
Well, one of the most shocking things that I do that freak out the project managers and tech leads that I'm coaching is to instill the discipline that if the team is not moving forward, to cancel the sprint, to force a replan, to force everybody to stop what they're doing and to say, okay, what am I going to do about us moving in the wrong direction today, tomorrow? And then canceling it and then not following the original plan that was created a month ago. It's like there's something uneasy to them. So to you,
yes. When I was starting,
yeah,
we did these weekly task cycles, and I think at that moment also the weekly delivery cycles even. Yeah, because if it's a very short period of time, then I saw, and that's the nice things if I see that happening. Halfway a week, I saw people understanding that what they thought they were going to achieve was not the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so lovely to see them realize that. And then they went in a meeting room. They said, what is it that is holding our back? What's the problem? And replan. And they were, within half an hour, they were back to their work.
Yeah, and it's very quick. You cancel it. You're like, oh, sorry, wrong direction. Let's turn the car around.
So I don't have the concept of sprint. The delivery cycle is a plan to check act cycle. The delivery cycle is maximum 2 weeks. But don't let something rot on the table if in 2 days you have something you need feedback from an important stakeholder.
Act on
don't
pain
wait until the end of 2 weeks or so. No. So soon in a team we may have different delivery cycles. Focusing on maybe different stakeholders. Now you can say we should focus on one thing only. Well, if you have a team of 5, 6, 7 people, why do they all have to work on one thing? That's not efficient. I was in a large project.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, in the UK, and that was in it. I just observing because they were doing Scrum, so I observed their sprint planning, and I said, guys, it's all nice what you are planning there, but how can we measure that we are successful at the end of the sprint? We deliver working software. We are agile, you know. I said,
they don't have understanding of the finished product.
How about we give it to some stakeholders and no question, no issue. So if they have one question to ask, we failed. If they find one issue, we failed. That's impossible. How do they know what to do with what we give them? Yeah, I said, well, you're clever guys. Simple requirement, no question, no issue. You find out how to do that. Yeah. Interestingly, one already starts thinking, maybe halfway the sprint, we invite somebody of them and give it to them and see
feedback.
I said, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Amazing.
So at the end of the sprint, it should simply work. Because if you give the software to the customer, you are not there to handheld the computer. Yeah, the computer must. So actually, they succeeded. I think you can see a page on my website, otherwise in my materials. So they gave it to the customer, and they said the only thing he said, take the mouse. That was on a distance. The customer was through a telephone, and on the screen when we he said, take the mouse. We felt a thrill of excitement through the telephone because it was the first time in 2 years they were asked to touch the mouse at the other side.
They weren't directed or demoed too, right?
So we saw the cursor moving and said, okay, you found the mouse. Yeah. And now can you type in, take this record and change something? And he changed also something in his computer. And then the idea was that if they try to save it, it says, it's already changed. What do you want to do? Something like that. Yeah. I said, is this the only thing that you as a team of 8 people delivered in 2 weeks? Well, actually, I almost asked that question at the planning time. Yeah. But I said,
because you saw where it was going.
Let's focus on one thing at a time. Yeah. But, well, there are so interesting things you see. But the thing is, people in the treadmill don't ask these questions because they are so busy. So, as I said, if I'm busy, in the treadmill,
they're optimizing busyness.
Yeah. So you need somebody outside of the treadmill to see what's happening there.
So what does an ideal project look like? Should there be someone on the outside, like a coach, that isn't
until they are able to manage each other, and probably being humans, it's useful to have somebody like that. Now you can say in Scrum you have the Scrum Master. The problem is, well, The benefit
they
for
usually
me
the
is
project manager.
that they can't tell me stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if I don't know exactly what they do, as an engineer, I understand most of what they do, and I understand very clearly if they try to tell me something that I feel, can you explain that better?
Mhm.
Yeah. So you need somebody who actually can have an overview of what they're doing and ask these questions. I don't have to know the details, that's what they know. But ask these questions to just get them out of the hamster wheel, yeah, and then they can run through it faster the next week and the next week. If I come in a project, usually the management asks me, when is it done? I said, how do we know? Yeah, the first week. I said, after 5 weeks, we're going to start telling you what probably will happen, because we don't know exactly how things will develop, because we learn, the customer learns. Yeah. So we may, together with the customer, change some ideas, but based on what we know, in 5 weeks, the individuals have learned enough planning and organizing themselves, so that the team in 3 weeks learned organizing themselves. And in 5 weeks, we start showing you a timeline of the current 10 weeks or so, and to predict what probably is going to happen.
So you build cohesion inside the team so that the communication is aligned.
Yes.
With each other, with the team members,
Yeah.
so that
But
everybody's on the same page.
if they individually don't know how to do that,
Exactly.
yeah,
Or they
how can they
disagree.
do it as a team?
Yeah. So I have about 15 years of experience in the industry. You have 40, 50. A lot of our viewers are either going to the boot camps or are junior devs, or maybe considering going into tech or working in anything that is collaborative as a team. What's the best way for them to learn it? If I put together a team of 10 freshmen or just juniors with a manager, how do they learn all this? A lot of this is not intuitive. How would you set up them
Okay,
for
so
success?
if you have just fresh people, freshmen as you call them,
Yeah,
just coming from school,
let's say, or
you
self-taught, or
need somebody as an architect for an overall view. Yeah. So actually, sometimes I secretly do a product development project. A few years ago, I did one, and there because the project was going to fail, so that's why the boss called me. He heard me coaching, and he understood that I also know something about electronic design and firmware. So he asked me, "Can you run this project, because I don't have time and my people are not able to do this coherently." So I went there every week, 6 hours travel, and so I architected the things, and we had specialists, one for power supply, one for PCB design, one for certain software, and the old system that he knows. So that way, where the people themselves were, at least according to the boss, not capable of getting the product successfully in time, you need somebody who is able to do that.
Somebody who's able to do that. So what does
And
the architect provide on a strategic
well,
level? Are we talking design? Are we just talking confidence that, or is it harmony? Is it bringing everybody on the same page to align the streams?
well,
What is it exactly?
in your preparation, you said it would be in what was it? Mission critical
Mission
product or
critical
so.
system. Yeah.
In my case, it was a mission critical system, because he wanted to sell the company, and without the new product, the company wasn't sellable. So you need at least somebody who is maybe not able to do all the work, but basically is able to do all the work. At least understand what has to be done. If it's mission critical,
Understand.
you have to know what the mission is and what the criticalities are. And
That's
if
a very good point.
freshmen don't have experience in that, you can't
Spot those.
expect from them. But if you tell them these things,
Mhm.
especially if you just come from your education, you have learned to absorb these things, and then uh, the trouble or the difficulty for the team lead is there not to do everything himself,
Mhm.
but
Mhm. Fighting
to try
fires.
to let them do it, but carefully see how they progress and keep them on the right path, and see how quickly they can swim themselves.
I like your quote. We are now slightly over time, but I like your quote to end on this note. Never allow team members to jeopardize the product in the attempt to hit what might be, after all, an arbitrary deadline.
Yeah, so I checked that one on my website. You found it on my website.
On your website, yes.
And by typing in the search jeopardize, I found the quote immediately. And it was in a book from, what was it, 1996 or so, from
Mm-hmm.
Steve McGuire. And so arbitrary deadlines.
Arbitrary, yeah. Emphasis on
Yeah,
arbitrary.
well, an arbitrary deadline is not a deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
a
how
deadline is
can
a
you tell?
deadline.
How can somebody who's mid-level or less experienced tell that the deadline? What is a litmus test that anybody can apply to check if the deadline is arbitrary?
The magic word is why. Why does who need it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So quality on time means you are interested in what on time is. It can be earlier or later than what the customer says or that the boss says.
On time. On time can
Yeah.
be earlier or later than the deadline.
Yeah. What is the right time? The right
Mm-hmm.
result at the right time.
Interesting.
If you deliver too early or too late, everything with two is
Mm-hmm.
too bad. Yeah.
Mm.
So um, is a deadline real? Yeah. You can ask who's waiting for it? What are they going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
Which both is a question for the quality for what and the time when.
When? Yeah.
Yeah, when does who need it to do what?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get an answer, it's probably an arbitrary deadline.
Mm-hmm.
But I told you already, I love deadlines, and
Of course,
therefore, if I don't get them, we
you
put
make
them
them.
ourselves because of Parkinson's law. Yeah, if Parkinson's law, people spend the time available. If you have no deadline, you have a lot of time available.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the quotes I also have is uh, we use time boxing and not feature boxing.
Time
Feature
boxing,
boxing,
not feature boxing.
feature boxing is waiting until it's done. And then you have Parkinson's law at the maximum.
Mm-hmm.
So a time box that is too small also doesn't work. And that's why in the first week I start teaching people how to define for themselves what a right time box is,
Mm-hmm.
not to waste time more than necessary, but not to have a time box way too small
So
to be
small, so they can't
successful.
deliver anything. Yeah.
And then within 3 weeks, people learn how to do that because
Amazing.
finally somebody challenged them to be serious about time, which never happened before.
You're very consistent. And I like the
Am I?
quote that you mentioned earlier, which is modulating on something, modulating on a plan, modulating on a product is,
Generating, modulating.
yeah, modulating is much easier than generating. And I find it I find it easier, even now today with AI, with ChatGPT, I find it much easier to just dump something out, an article, content, a roadmap maybe, and modulate what I was given rather than generate one from scratch.
An example is there. If you ask the customer, what do you want? Or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, this is what we think you want,
Yeah, and then
then
modulate
it
that.
easily says no or
Mhm.
yes or
Yes, exactly,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of product owners want to have this conversation by asking for estimates, but then they get what they asked for, and it's not what they wanted.
Yeah. So if people haven't learned to estimate,
Yeah.
yeah, how can you expect them to give, well, good estimates don't exist. An estimate is an estimate, period.
Yeah,
but that's another story.
They're always wrong, but some of them are useful.
An estimate is never wrong. An estimate is never wrong. It's an estimate. And reality can be different from the estimate.
Okay.
And then once we see that, and we do that every week because we plan at the beginning of the week, and the next week we reflect after having
that's a
short reflect in what did we think first, what do we know now, what do we learn, and how can we use the learning for doing it better the next week.
The estimates are never wrong. It's an estimate. Yeah. So the estimate is always right, but it might be unrealistic. It might have nothing to do with reality.
It is, well, if we are serious, an estimate is based on our current knowledge. Which may be incomplete or whatever. The parking system, they knew exactly what they were going to do because they had been in parking systems a long time. Yeah. And they estimated with a group of 4 people, they estimated in days, roughly in days.
Sure.
And then they said, okay, well, before there was an exhibition, that's only every 2 years, so that's a hard deadline. Yeah. So we have to have a system there. And it fitted easily. So they went all, no need to prioritize because enough time. But then they were very good in measuring what they actually had, their progress. So I saw in a few weeks, they took twice as much. And after another few weeks, they took 4 times as much. Well, it means we had to multiply all the other estimates with 4.
The roadmap itself.
Yeah. So I went to our R&D boss. I closed his door. I said, Wim, I'm not leaving this room until we have decided what to do with this knowledge.
And
it took a little bit time for him to understand what I was talking about. I said, open your computer, you see what's happening. It takes 4 times as much.
That reality check, it is difficult.
Yeah. Then he summoned the project manager and the architect. He said, guys, we don't leave this room until we decided what to do, because now we have to prioritize. To make the long story short, very successful exhibition.
What I find the most, at least in my coaching practice, especially when I'm dealing with leaders who have to plan a roadmap or to have to sort of communicate with other stakeholders, is that their job is much easier if they flip the conversation around. If rather than there being a roadmap and then they're asked to estimate, if we just create the roadmap and we give it to the stakeholders and then they modulate the roadmap. It's like, no, you got this wrong. This is more important. And then that exercise is much quicker and much more valuable to everybody involved rather than starting off with an overly generated model and then trying to elicit some kind of precision, not even accuracy, just precision. Please estimate this and be precise, not, it's like in hours, please.
Estimates are estimates to the best of our knowledge. And we measure and we see how progress is going. And if the progress goes half as fast, we know the project, as we thought this was going to be, will be twice as long. Failure is not an option. If that's beyond the deadline, what are we going to do about it? It's as simple as that.
What are we going to do about it? Well, we're now past our time. I think that this would be
9 minutes over time. So what are we going to do about that? Continue another hour?
We could, but
maybe it's a repetition of.
It's a lovely summer day outside, and I would like to take the kids out for a walk. And I find that our viewers generally don't watch the entire 2 hours if it's a 2-hour episode. That's mostly for me and my guest. How and when and in what capacity can people reach out to you for coaching, for advice? They invite you as a speaker. What are you open to, and who should reach out to you?
Well, if you know my name, you can find my website. Niels@malotaux.eu, but on my website you see the contacts. You can even select a time for a discussion, but also just send an email. I'm in 2 weeks. I'm for 8 weeks in Japan, but on a distance, I can still discuss. I love to discuss real things. I'm not academic. I want to see real problems. If people want to discuss individually their real problem, just reach out and we have a nice discussion.
Real problems.
And we can see whether my weird questions
That's a good
can
filter.
help you.
I like that. The real problems.
Real problems, because then I don't have to say it depends. Then we can just think what we could do in this case. Yeah. So if you come with a general question, we can have general answers, but what's the point? So I love to have discussions with people in the real situation.
Did I understand you correctly that you do most of your coaching in person, in physical space?
Yeah, I prefer to do it physical because it's not what people tell me during a Zoom meeting, but it's what they don't tell me.
The body language,
the body language. So sometimes I call that the flying QA person. Yeah, QA is not testing, that's another story. But the flying QA, making sure that the developers deliver the right stuff at the right time. So I prefer physical, but nowadays, and I also have learned to work on a distance. Yeah, so some physical and a mix of physical and online can be done once you know the people. I was in a project in Germany where they had programmers from Romania. I said, why don't we invite them here? So 2 weeks later, they came for a week. And then after that, you have a much better contact.
Yeah.
Because then you understand the body language on the video screen better if you have smelled them, felt them.
Basically,
Yeah. So I prefer that. And as I said, I'm used to travel about 6 hours to customers. So that's not the difficulty.
So what's your engagement ring? 6 hours of travel from where? Central Europe primarily?
Well, I when I'm in my house in Germany, I'm 2.5 hours from an airport, Düsseldorf or Frankfurt. And from there, Dublin is 1.5 per plane, half hour to the hotel, next day busy. I never work more than half weeks. Yeah, because I have to travel and I have to think and I have to do my marketing and all these things. So I never sell more than half weeks, but people don't need that because people need time to work and I shouldn't be there all the time. Yeah. So Freiburg, I've been doing work, coached some, done some in Romania. Holland, of course, I'm Dutch, although I live in Germany and sometimes in Japan. So don't worry about the distance. We can make a solution there. And if we can't, we'll find out.
Do you prefer a particular size of team or a particular person in the team reaching out to you?
No. First, individuals reach out to me because individuals I do for free until it takes too much. And teams, the company has to pay. So start with an individual and then we'll think how to continue.
Perfect.
But the team size, a project in the UK, 70 people, 3 Scrum teams, plus the other half was doing requirements and doing database and doing product ownership and all these things, and writing reports for project management. Yeah. So the size is not a problem. In the US, there was a project where they were developing a new platform for oscilloscopes and measuring instruments, about 40 people. So we started with one team of the 4 teams. And because they wanted to try out a nice story, but does it really work? After a few weeks, 2 other teams followed because they saw how fast it went. But the 4th team took a little bit longer because during my introduction, from the back of the room, the team lead shouted, "This is micromanagement. We will never do this." I said, okay, be my guest. You don't have to. Who am I to tell you what to do? Yeah. But after 2 or 3 months, she had to follow because she lagged so much behind compared with the others. So then social control can take over. So the size is not the problem. Just start and see what happens. Of course, I can't convert 1,000 people, but nobody can do that. Yeah, you convert a few, and then they have to learn how to convert the rest.
And then lead by example.
If necessary, because
If necessary. If
not
it works.
everything people do is wrong. Yeah, we have to, and that's one of the things why these one-on-ones I start doing with people in the team. Yeah, I ask, what should we achieve? What are you going to do to support that? And does it fit in the week? By doing that, within 1 week, I know exactly what they're doing. And the interesting thing, and they tell me that, they say after that team meeting of 20 minutes, they say, now we know exactly what everybody in my team is going to do. I never know that. Yeah.
It's very useful.
So, etc., etc., etc.
Okay.
So anybody who wants to challenge me and ask some questions about what could we do about it, feel free. If it's too much, I will tell you.
Your LinkedIn and your website are in the comments now, under the description on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So anybody who wants to check it out.
Lots of material in my website.
And lots of material, and the quotes and the mantras and the books, use cases.
Exactly. And a lot of booklets. No books. People say don't write a book because that's too much. I won't read it anyway. Yeah, so small booklets.
I wrote a booklet as well, and I received exactly the same feedback.
So people. So if people can't even find me, maybe they don't need coaching because it's hopeless. Fair. But if they're clever enough to find me, there is hope.
There is hope. It's a great point to end our conversation for today, Niels. Thank you very much for joining me. I really enjoyed the conversation. There's a lot of knowledge bombs for everybody, I believe. Different industries, different roles, different individuals, different experiences. We found something useful for everybody.
I hope so. What I usually say at the end of the day, I hope I didn't waste too much of your time.
I hope I didn't waste too much of your time. That is a lovely way to end today's podcast. To the viewer, thank you very much for watching this live, or if you're watching the recording. If you found anything of value, if your time wasn't wasted too much, please leave a like, subscribe if you would like to stay in touch, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.